Are you ready for their words of wisdom? Aren't you ready? No pressure. We have about 10 minutes or so to chat, so I want to pick your brain a little bit, but first, why don't we start with kind of a moment of reflection a little bit. We were just talking about how every single person in this room can give you a story about how someone else opened a door for them. So let me hear your stories, and I'll start with you. If you can think of a moment where someone opened the door for you, and also just a little bit of a reflection on perhaps some of the challenges in your career and some of the things that inspired you along the way. Essentially, what got you to this chair in this moment. In 30 seconds. No,
Okay. Talk fast. Well, first, I want to thank NPower very much for honoring IBM. And so this is a topic, as was mentioned, how committed we are. But as I listen to everyone else's story, I suspect mine and Don's aren't any different, because I think I would have been in that 70% otherwise that Bettina talked about. And so the first story I reflect on is my mom.
Okay.
And when I was 16, my father left us. And he left us with no money. No house, and we went on food stamps, and my mother said, look, this isn't how this story's gonna end. She had not gone to college, she had not gotten a degree, she had no education, and she was determined, and she said, and it was a lesson we all learned, she never said it, but we watched her. She went back to school at night, I worked, helped her during the day, and slowly she got back on her feet and got off of food stamps as fast as we could. But what we all learned from her was this point that never let anyone else define who you are. Only you will define who you are. And she was never going to let that happen. And so that sort of started it. And then, I was lucky enough, just a poor kid that then went to college, and I really believe this about this country. Where there's a will, there's a way. And I have to thank General Motors. I was at Northwestern. We were together.
One of the greatest institutions on the planet.
Yeah,
Northwestern
well,
University.
we both graduated from Northwestern. The same year as well. Okay? I know you were wondering that. I know it, so I'll just clarify it.
We were roommates.
Exactly. And but there I was, and as you know, good school, and so scraping my way through, and out of the blue appeared General Motors, and they gave me a scholarship, and it taught me the beginnings of the role private sector plays and how important it is to change really the lives of so many people, and that stayed with me to this day.
That's fantastic. This is why you do what you do.
Well,
your turn.
It's
It's
such a great story. I want you to tell it again.
No.
Mine is, I have to say, it's a continual set of doors that are still being opened for me. And if I go back to my childhood, it was very, very different, other than that I was the middle of 7 and no one knew I was there. So I had to find my way through. As I did, one of the things when I was at IBM, since we talked about that, I had a bit of success, and it was more luck, I think. I was managing Wall Street in 1987 when the crash happened. And of course, everyone needed more compute power, and so everyone thought, boy, this guy knows what he's doing. He's the top performing person in the entire company. But it was really the demand that was there. And I was meeting with one of your predecessors, John Akers, and he said, Don, I want to ask you 2 questions. If you could work anywhere in the world, where would you work? And if you could have any job in the world, what would it be? And without thinking a lot about it, I said, if I could work anywhere in the world, this is 1989, if I could work anywhere in the world, it would be in Japan, because that was the most aggressive place at that time in terms of the computer world. And if I could do any job, it would be strategy. The next Monday, I was announced Director of Strategy for IBM Japan. Now, my wife is right over here, and my sons are on the far table. At that point, they were all under 10, and we ended up leaving and going to Japan. No one also had told me that IBM Japan is all Japanese. And I realized what had happened. Someone took a chance on me. Sometimes they call that a stretch job. And it stretched our entire family. It actually brought us closer than ever. And it really threw me to the ground to make sure I had to fight and learn all over again. So if someone doing a job or a door like that for me inspired me, and that's what I try to do all the time. One of the reasons I love NPower is this whole concept of opening a door, giving a chance.
It's fantastic. Thank you for sharing your story. In fact, let's dig in now. So now you're in a position of leadership. What will the technology workforce look like in the future? What have your organizations done to help shape the future? And then with that said, I've actually learned a lot just within the last 48 hours. I didn't know a lot about the skills gap. So talk to us a little bit about what innovative strategies and perspectives you've adopted to address the skills gap.
Yes, so let me, I do want to jump in.
Yeah.
Because I'm so passionate about this. Like Don and I both had chances, and I had such a great chance at an education. And I think the root of so many issues today are education and skills. And the technologies that so many people in this room build, they're wonderful, and they'll be the greatest opportunity of our time. They will also present the greatest challenge of our time.
How so?
And because it's going to widen the gap between, if you call it the have and the have-not. And I think that is a tremendous issue right now in this country, but in almost every country in the world. And so you cannot have a world where everyone has to have a university degree to succeed. This is, to me, the roots of trouble everywhere. And so we've been really dedicated to this idea. Kind of called it new collar. So not white collar, not blue collar, new collar, that there would be other pathways to jobs that use technology, and that you could make a great living this way. And that was a program started called Pathway to Technology, which is now 100,000 kids. Wow. Think of it as a 6-year high school, and we provide mentorship with 400 other companies doing it. A chance at a job in the summertime. They end up with a free community college degree, and the secret is a curriculum that industry will hire. And today, I have centers at a third of these, well, I call them kids. I mean, that's probably not right, but kids are in these centers, double the median income age or wage that is there. And so this idea that there are many opportunities to have a wonderful career and participate in this new age economy. And I think it's really never going to be solved unless it's a public-private partnership, which is why we've also, like Don, put so much effort into hiring veterans as well and training them in cyber skills, just like Symantec was up on that screen for. So I think it's something that is infinitely solvable with a public-private partnership, and we can't let this sit in government's hands.
That's good. You want to jump in there?
You know, I agree. I think the world of technology of the future is going to be very different than the one you and I grew up in. You know, we grew up in...
You grew up in that.
Yeah. I think we're very... exactly. I'm not fully grown up anyway. But I think we grew up in organizations that were much more hierarchical. I think, you know, my advice is the future of tech is going to be really all about agile. And it's going to be people just like all of you around tables with different diverse set of ideas. That's why diversity is going to be so important. And then, you know, you think about the Agile Manifesto, as most of you know it, you know, the first law of Agile is to actually, you know, not worry about doing it over again, right? And yet we're all trained on trying to move forward, and yet Agile is all about let's second guess ourselves and let's see if we can do it better. And so I really think that the diversity of thought is going to be so critical, and the way in which we organize is going to be very different than what we've had over the last 30 years in this industry.
You use the word diversity. Let's talk about the power of diversity in your organizations and how it makes companies stronger and more resilient, more agile. How do you, and it's a challenge sometimes, you know, how are you conquering that? What's your thought?
Well, first, I don't even really use the word just diversity. To me, it is inclusion of anyone, any diverse thought, but it's your sexual preference, it's your race, it's your, whether you're male or female or any of your beliefs. And I think that's where it starts. And this is a business imperative. I think we all say this. We have worked, I mean, I'm really blessed to be in a company that has had this in its veins for decades. So our first, it was 1914, the first disabled person. The first senior woman executive was 1943, so I was not first of anything. I mean, it was a long history, even equal opportunity, 11 years before the Civil Rights Act. So that is just something we've got to do better and better every year, and particularly technology. When we're all building the technologies people use, it has to be built by a diverse workforce, or you end up with things that don't mirror what the world looks like. And so this, to me, is one of the most profound, I think, commitments a company can make. And it is all about making people feel like they can bring and be very comfortable. One of my meetings this afternoon was with Speaker Strauss from Texas, from the House of Representatives, some of you might remember the bathroom bill that went there. And we were one of the strong speakers against that bathroom bill passing. It dealt, some of our colleagues are from here too, and big in Texas as well, like us. Now, why would we have an opinion about this? Was it just for an LGBTQ community, or because it was so, people felt, I want to feel like I can be myself at work no matter what or who I am. And we picked a thing to take a stance on, and that was one of them. And obviously got those bills defeated. But this is all about, so if I feel comfortable coming to work, I will do a better job, and I will therefore contribute the most. So we'll, I think like many people here, stay so very focused on it.
We talked about diversity, you've talked about the future of technology workforce. Let's talk a little bit about the digital transformation, how it's changing the way business is done and decisions are made. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, digital transformation for me, I now have a lens that I look at almost every news report. And I think of it just today's, if I open the Wall Street Journal, I don't open it, by the way. Of course, I just turn it on. And if I'm given it under my door at a hotel, I leave it there because I hope someone else can use it, because I find it so much richer. But every company I look at, I break into two categories. Are they digitally awake and they're running forward trying to figure out how to get there?
Wow.
Or are they digitally asleep and they're about to be run over? And then I think, can I do anything to actually help them? So I really think there's a digital divide that's going on that is going to be defining the future of industry. And I know we all talk about what made up the S&P over the last 100 years and how that's changed. I think the firms that get it, the companies that get it, and this is backed up by a fair amount of data that's come out of MIT and others, that if you can be digitally awake and forward, you have a high probability of success.
And give us some nuggets of wisdom here for the people in this room. Talk about some of the competitive advantages for companies and individual technology professionals in the sector when it comes to digital transformation. What's something that they should be, I guess, on the cutting edge of, or maybe something they can look into? What would you say?
You know, for me, I'll give you an example, and Ginni doesn't even know what a big part she played at this, but when she signed a handshake agreement with Tim Cook at Apple, that came across the TV live, and my phone lit up. It happened to be a cell phone, and I was getting an MRI, and I learned digitally you're not supposed to have a cell phone when you're getting an MRI, which I caution all of you. But everyone at Citi was saying, how can we be the first? How can we be the first to let our customers around the world have, on an Apple Watch, the ability to bank? And I called Ginni up and said, could you help us out? And what, you know, obviously those of us in the cybersecurity world that's here recognize that's a big threat. Wow. But what we did is we charged forward. We used the digital labs for IBM in Tel Aviv to wrap the Apple Watch with our software on the inside, and we were first to market, and we did it in 180 days. I think that's the way we're all going to have to act. And it's exciting ventures that you put together, then wrapping it, and then bringing it to market.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, before you leave me this evening, let's talk about NPower and the work your companies are doing to support the work of NPower. And frankly, while we're here, open more doors to talent. What are you doing?
Yes, so it is our great honor. We gave an impact grant of $100,000 working on a program.
Let's give that a round of applause.
Well, thank you, but, and this is a program for our veterans, a program called Veteran Accelerate, and really to scale it in a very broad way. And one of the perfect examples, I've got a number of our veterans that are here tonight. We've signed up, we'll hire 2,000 veterans by 2020, so just in a couple years, we're halfway there. And one of the programs is all around wonderful opportunity.
Wow.
Think of all the cyber skills many of us need.
Yeah.
And so Chris Greifenberger is here, who was a veteran and then went on to work in the sheriff department, and then we trained him through this program, and he is doing cyber work for the NYPD here, and it is just a wonderful, other than as I met many of them tonight, they call me ma'am, which I'm like, okay, that means I'm super old to you, you know? And they told me that's just their training. I don't think that's accurate. So, but it was, to me, if we can contribute in that way, in addition to the pathway to technology we talked about, but we're particularly working together on how to scale the veteran program.
And what would you say to support NPower?
You know, NPower to me, it's just one of those great stories. And just this last week, I was lucky enough to attend a breakfast. And it was a digital breakfast, of course, because we couldn't, being global, we had to bring everyone in through video. And I ran into Crystal James. Crystal, can you stand up? Maybe you can get a spotlight on her. And she's not on the agenda, but I can tell you, she talked at breakfast about what her life was like, and it was a life of firsts. And for me, what was exciting is, I think, if I remember correctly, you were the first to go to college in your whole family, and then you were first to decide to do service. You joined the Navy. You became the first in everything you did in the Navy. You were the first in your class.
Sir, I just want you to
She did.
And so all that success, but then after 7 years when you transitioned out, you used a term, and I thought about it that night. You were free falling. This was not a song. This is free falling, you said, without a parachute. And I couldn't imagine that kind of fear, but someone put an arm around you from NPower and started to give you structure, and then taught you about technology, and then got you an internship at Citi, and now you're working for us as a great contributor of our core infrastructure. And to me, that's exactly what NPower is all about. So Crystal, thank you.
Thank you.
She said so.
Ginni, let me leave you with the last word this evening. We have a lot of NPower alumni in the room this evening. What advice would you give them tonight as far as growing their careers? And frankly, not just NPower graduates, everyone in this room. Give us a nugget of wisdom.
Well, a lesson I learned early, and even to this day, and I think it applies to people, to companies, to countries, but there was a time, and Don said people reach out. I had been offered, like Don, a new position. And the person called me in and offered me the job. And I stood there for a while, and I said, in my mind, I said, I know I'm not ready for this. I need a few more years. I'm not yet, I don't know everything I should. This would have been a few more years from now. And I looked at him and I said, can I think about it overnight? And he looked at me and he said, okay. And I went home and I said to my husband, I told him the whole story. He's kind of looking, same husband I have today, 39 years later, going like this, like he still does. And I'll always remember the only thing he said to me was, he looked at me and he said, do you think a man would have answered it that way? I said, no. And I went in the next day and I took the job, and the person looked at me and he said, don't do that again.
Ooh.
I said, I understand. And the lesson, though, that I took from it was this feeling that you have to get used to that growth and comfort, they will never coexist.
Ooh, that's good.
And if you're going to grow, get really comfortable with being uncomfortable. And it served me well really the rest of my life, in that every time I'm nervous, I'm like, perfect, I'm learning something. And if you can channel it that way and just look for those opportunities to put yourself at risk, then you know you will grow. So I kind of always can that phrase in my mind that growth and comfort never coexist.
I feel like I should write that down. That was fantastic. Thank you. Weren't they good?
Yeah.
That was good.